So I would say that it doesn't necessarily change our strategies, but it does and already has changed some of our tactics. And I can give you an example of that. So an example would be, Facebook, without getting once again too deep into jargon, is a real-time bid platform. In other words, it's somewhat of an auction. So there's an ebb and flow of people coming in and out, including advertisers. It constantly changes. And the election cycle, if something happens, somebody says something, Trump, Hillary, either way, that will affect what you see in Facebook, right? So one example that's somewhat election related was there was the shooting in Orlando, and that day in Facebook was like crazy. Like you could not scroll past 2 posts where there wasn't something about that. So that day, we're running ads, and we noticed that the cost of those ads was just going way up. And it makes sense because there's some amount of inventory. So like places you can show ads in Facebook, and those spots would be taken up by the news. So it cost more to be there, all things even. So, I mean, that we had to adjust. We had to change our tactic. Our strategy didn't change, but it was like, okay, we need to pull back our bids because today it's just not going to work for this. Or it's not going to work as well as it normally does, I guess is the best way to put it. On top of that, I would say this is going to be an interesting year, and you probably could talk more about this. But because the Olympics happened, brands made a lot of deals with the networks to show their products. And since TV was down in terms of like how many people got to see those commercials, there's industry jargon once again called like a make good, where they're like, okay, now because you didn't get as much impressions on your commercial, we're going to show it on our website. So that often affects display, which John runs.
Yeah. I mean, on the AdWords side, it's probably a little bit less affected by, at least paid search is less affected by market variables like the election. I do think that it does provide some opportunities for some like clever creative.
Yeah.
You can probably like come up with some stuff that like plays on words. I mean, we're finding on just when we're making ads, like better ad copy is stuff, one, that's more fun to write, and two, that just differentiates.
Yeah.
It kind of strays away from the standard, call to action, save $10 copy, and is a lot more creative. Now, where one thing that I think it can affect is on the display network, and similar probably to what you were saying around like make goods and there's increased competition, but also something that probably not a lot of people even catch, even people that are at agencies and that run the display network all the time, applies really when you're looking at like mobile apps, like the CNN app, for example. When there's a lot of news happening, CNN does like push notifications. And from an advertiser, if you're running display ads, you're on mobile apps, you're probably running a lot of your inventory on the CNN app. Well, anytime I do a push notification, that drives thousands of people to the app at that very moment, and what results is just like huge spikes in visits that you don't really know what's driving it. And because it's an election year, those are going to be happening a lot more frequently as we get closer to election day, and that could result in like thousands of dollars of spend, especially with just the way that apps are and the way the ads are in them, where you can accidentally click on ads all the time. So there are like a lot of little things like that really get down into the details, and you won't really catch if you're looking at an entire account worth of performance. But when you actually get into it, that could be a couple $1,000s over a week, depending on like how big of an advertiser you are.
Yeah, I would add to his first point. I think good ads are relevant. They're relevant to the target in some way, like you're communicating a message, right? And with the election comes a chance to be relevant to the election itself. So if you can work that into creative, you can see, ads perform better than your standard kind of benchmark, straightforward message. So it's something fun to play with.
Mm-hmm.